Hello, hello. I can't tell you how excited I am about this. IG Live today. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Wednesday. Let me tell you about Wednesdays. And I'll explain what I'm wearing, by the way. So my Wednesdays in middle school and high school was comprised of, oh yay, Tina's there. My Wednesdays were comprised of waiting for Wednesday to come and watching Dawson's Creek. Hi, Lily. And I don't know if you're familiar with this show, Dawson's Creek. You know, it was on this little show with Katie Holmes and James Matterby. Anyways, I can't tell you how excited I am. This is like, I'm so excited, Gina, to talk with you. So I'm gonna be very brief and then get Gina. Gina's already in the room. Gina Fattore. So anyways, we're doing this for the fans, for anybody who likes Dawson's Creek, Gilmore Girl, King of the Hill, Californication. So I am sporting I'm a Pacey fan, and Pacey, of course, is the Mighty Ducks, Josh Jackson. So that's what I'm wearing. And then I have a funny shirt behind there, Gina, that I can't wait to show you. So anyways, without further ado, let's just get her in the room and we can start diving into all this. So, all right, let's do this. I'm going to ask you, Gina, to let's do this. Here we go. And if anybody has questions, please do. I already have some questions from the audience from the last week. But if anybody has questions as our conversation goes through, please let us know. And if you know of anybody else who is looking to go into TV writing or is interested in these shows, definitely please share this with them. All right. So we're telling flowers. Okay, fantastic. Gina, I just sent through the request, so hopefully it got to you. And we'll get started. All right. Accept. I hope this. Here we go. Thank you all for being patient. Oh no. Okay. Hang tight, everybody. We're having yes, that is a Mighty Ducks jersey, Amanda. We're having some technical difficulties. It's okay. Gina, I'm going to ask you again. Let's see here. Invite. So I just, yay! You got it. You're on your first IG Live, Gina.
It is. It's my first one. Oh my gosh. Thank you for being patient.
Oh, of course. Are you kidding me? This is I can't even believe I'm talking to you right now. I've been in touch with Gina since the end of last year. So thank you so much, Gina, for even doing this. I have a little treat for you. I got this shirt a while ago.
Oh my God. It's the meme. It looks great. I mean, it's a great color too. It's gonna look, I'm sure it looks great on. I love it.
I was gonna wear it, but it doesn't fit me right now. So I just thought I'd at least share that with you. I'm wearing the jersey, the Mighty Ducks jersey for Josh Jackson, in honor of him. So
I saw, hockey. Yeah, I get it. That was
Okay, well, I know that I talked a little bit about you, but do you want to, before we dive into it, do you want to share a little bit about yourself, Gina?
I mean, I guess I heard you talking. I'm a TV writer. I've worked on many shows that people love, but Dawson's Creek is one that I think I worked on for 4 years of my life, and I always say that I went to one of those high schools where it was only 10, 11, 12. So I actually did work on Dawson's Creek for longer than I was in high school. It's a huge part of my life. And actually, this is my little you can see I have the poster for the Philadelphia story, which is behind me, which is where we got the name for the boat, the True Love. And, it's such a big part of my life. And I was so touched over the pandemic, especially so many people reached out and I could just see people were rewatching the show. And, it's so great to be a part of something that so many people, carry in their hearts.
And you're being very modest, but for anyone who knows this, but Gina, you wrote some of the best episodes. Like when people think about the show, like season 3, when Pacey and Joey got together, like, so I'm diving in already, but like really, you really did like, I mean, my first email was PJ fan. So if anybody knows me, literally it was like PJ fan. And I would like, anyways, like you really did like, and it was crazy because you came into Dawson's Creek in season 3 when the showrunner Kevin Williamson left. And so I have a very like I crafted this question with one of my buddies actually. Like we were like, how do we ask this question to Gina? But like you really did like shape like one of the best romances on television in a show where you didn't think like truly like when we were growing up, you know, love stories like were, you know, you kind of already knew like, you know, that people were destined to be together, and you really did kind of like work a relationship to take a leap on to take, you know, how real love is taking a leap of faith, and you really did that with these characters. And so I wanted to understand from you, like, how did you architect this love story going into season 3 with Pacey and Joey? Is that too bold of a question?
Well, I mean, you know, as everyone knows, I'm not just being modest. Like TV really is this huge collaboration. And especially when you start season 3, you know, we had a certain story and a set of characters and, you know, a world that was already there. And, you know, it was from the get-go, if you watch the first episode of season 3, ends with that great Joey Pacey scene, which that's all Greg Berlanti in my memory, like him writing that. And I can still picture Joey, you know, crying on the dock. And so we always knew that we were going to tell that story. And for me coming into it, I have just always been a huge fan of, you know, the Philadelphia Story and great screwball comedies. So the instant that I started watching the show, you know, when I got the job, I just thought, obviously Joey and Pacey do have that same kind of rapport. So I always approached it completely from that space of loving those movies and wanting to do our version of a story like that.
Oh my God, you did such a beautiful job. And like, I'm curious, like was the team of writers, were they like, okay, you're gonna, because for example, the first episode that you wrote, I'm going to skip over to 4 to Tango. I'm going to just go to that one. But like, that is truly the first time we really, like, we know that they're starting throughout the episodes leading up to that. We know that they're starting to grow close, but that's the first episode where you're like, whoa, something's going on here. Like, so like, yeah, how did you envision like you're starting the approach there with them?
I mean, that really it was just an accident, I guess, that I got to write that one. That was my first, you know, solo episode. And it was just like, yeah, that was a little bit of just the luck of the draw. I mean, I've been doing this for so long that sometimes you do wind up writing the episode where it's like, oh, darn it, like this is not gonna be a great one. But that was so much fun from the get-go. And I do remember, I think it was Greg's idea about the ballroom dancing, and you know, it just seemed like it was gonna work. And honestly, that was one we had to write really quickly because, you know, we had some upheaval during the season, and part of TV back then when we were making those really long seasons of TV was you had to do everything really quickly. And if something changed in say an episode, you know, 7 or 8, then, you know, that was going to change the next 3 episodes moving forward. So it was one that was written really quickly. And I honestly don't know that I've ever rewatched that one, but I have really fond memories of it. Really fond memories.
Do you have a favorite, do you have a favorite part of that episode where you're like, they did good with my words, you know, like what did you?
I mean, it's funny, like in sort of a sweet way. Like I remember the Joey Pacey parts of that, but there was a really sweet little Jack story, and it was kind of, he had just come out. Yeah. And, you know, all those stories were really personal to Greg Berlanti, and I just thought they were so important and fun to write. And any story that involves someone being scared to express themselves, especially when it comes to, you know, love and romance, I always really relate to. So give me a person who's afraid, and I will write the hell out of that scene.
I love that. I myself am gay, and like, it's funny that at the time, like I do remember that, and I didn't like, I was still, you know, in very much deep in the closet. So it's funny how like, but it was cool to be exposed to that, to show the journey, and that like friend and turning to friends was like always a good thing to do. So thank you for that as well. Okay, so I'm gonna go through some other episodes that are important. So then jump forward to right before they kiss. You wrote Crime and Punishment and To Green with Love, which are like, oh, I'm so curious to hear what your thoughts are on these. But like these actually are like, for me, I think they're really staple to like seeing the growth of like how much they actually truly do care about each other. And I don't know if you knew that they were gonna kiss right after, or like what was sort of the how do you prepare for those episodes?
I mean, I will say at that point, like probably the reason I made that face is that was an incredibly stressful time for me. Like I wrote, 2 episodes in a row, and I wrote each one of them with the showrunner, and we had shared writing credit. But I was really writing, just so much. We were writing so quickly then, and I think we probably did know, like at that point, that like the kiss is 17, I think, maybe, or no, is
Yeah.
it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
See, I've got an
Yeah.
actual authority here on the other line with me.
Yeah.
So I think we did know that, but I mean, honestly, one of the things that's been so moving to me is I can remember being actually in Wilmington, and I used to go to the Y and swim laps. That was like my stress relieving thing. And I can remember being in the pool, like trying to do that wall stuff. And I'm pretty sure
it's so beautiful, Gina. It's so awesome. Like, are you kidding
I
me?
mean,
Like,
I really do think it was Greg Berlanti, but in retrospect, like it's such an amazing metaphor for like, just someone in your life who believes in you that much. And like, that's really so basic and simple, but it really works. I mean, it just works as a metaphor for someone who's wants to support you and support your vision and give you a chance. And, he can buy you a wall.
oh my God, you're like, I mean, we're gonna get to it, but like being a spinster, I mean, you're so romantic. Like, you're so like, there's a lot of like you really like tapped into like a lot of things that like just really resonate with people's hearts, and like why, like how you can show affection or love for another person, and being a teenager and watching that, you're just like, wow, like that people are capable of that. So that's really cool. Okay, so I'm gonna go into The Longest Day because why? I mean, one of the best episodes I've ever watched ever in my life. Do you want to tell people about The Longest Day? Why it was so famous, like infamous?
I mean, it was really like, it was an amazing time in the story. That episode was meant to be the episode where Dawson would finally find out about Joey and Pacey. So going in, that was what we knew. We had this one thing that was going to happen in the episode. And I don't know exactly when we decided that we were going to do something a little bit different, but it was really great because I have such a fond memory of this experience. Like we went through and we put the story up on the board. And back then, the third act break would have been like the big moment when something big has to happen. So I put that scene there at the end of the third act break, and it was like Dawson finds out about Joey and Pacey. And then Greg Berlanti came in the room and he said, make the third act break the first act break. And so we moved that scene early, and then we started just playing with time in general. And we came up with the idea of like, the first act is the story from Pacey's point of view. The second act is Joey's point of view. The third act is Dawson's point of view. And the fourth act just continues forward in chronological time. So for me, it was really one of the best, most exciting moments in terms of just really everything coming together, the whole season and everything we were trying to do. And I still remember the table read of that moment. It really was an amazing moment because, by season 3, people don't usually read the script before the table read. So we were sitting there in a room somewhere, reading the script out loud. And I think I was the only person in the room who knew what was in the script. So I got to watch everybody sort of like experience it. And like when we got to the second act and it started over, I could like see on everyone's faces that they were getting what we were trying to do. And that's the best moment. One of my sisters is a teacher, used to be a teacher, and she said that's a teaching moment, that feeling when that everybody's getting it. It was beautiful. Great.
It was season 3, episode 20, everybody. And it's funny because I don't know how many times I've seen that episode, but I had a burning question about this. And it might be just a simple solution that happened, but I'm like, and I never thought about this until like literally during the pandemic, when I'm watching it again, and I'm like, that moment when Jen is telling Dawson about Pacey and Joey, and Dawson kind of like immediately sort of guesses it, and he's like, "Oh, you mean?" So what was the thinking behind that? Because I'm like, wait, how did he immediately, like, how did he guess that? I don't.
Oh God, this is gonna look bad if I can't remember. Like, I mean, from were there other moments where, I mean, she say it like she's being incredibly sympathetic because she thinks he already knows. Like that's the thing that like tips him off. So I mean, honestly, I feel bad that I can't remember that one. But
Okay.
sometimes I will say that like sometimes the problem I always found with Dawson's was that I never knew what was in the episode right before the one that I had written.
Right.
Because when you were so focused on your own episode, you would sort of just zone out, and like you maybe you didn't know exactly what would happen. So it could be in 19, maybe there's something that Dawson is suspicious or something. This is terrible. I'm terrible. I can't remember.
No, you know what, like, my friend, and she owes me this. She's like, I think there was a moment in the previous episode, and I was like, what is it? So she owes me. So I'll get back to you on that one, Gina. But,
okay.
The confrontation is so heated. Like, that dialogue is incredible. Like, can you break it down for me as a writer, from a writer's perspective? Like, how do you construct a scene that people have been waiting for the whole season? Like, and if anything, the whole show they've never seen anything like this before.
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, honestly, every time I write, but like that was a particularly fun thing to write. I mean, for me, I remember particularly, I guess the confrontation in front of the house was actually pretty short. But for me, the thing I remember so much is Dawson and Joey's fight right after that, because it is like the ultimate thing is to just, you know, really put yourself in each character's shoes and like make sure they have the best possible argument. Give them the best, you know, and when you give everybody, and that was what the whole episode was about, really, like trying to see from each character's point of view, you know, what they felt. And you know, people, it was bad. I admit, people sometimes don't. Joey got a lot of bad energy at that point because she was seen as indecisive, and I get that. But as someone myself,
TV, though,
you know, I struggle with like self-doubt, and making decisions is hard, and that's what we were really trying to show from her perspective, what she would, you know, what she would be losing and winning. And you know, it was I don't know, you know, Dawson's, the whole show was a lot about dialogue, and so it was really amazing. You know, it was a great chance to to do that.
Yeah, and the ending scene with Pacey and Joey is like so heartfelt. Like, when they decide like they're breaking up. The tear. I believe there is a tear there, and was that a real tear?
I'm pretty darn sure that was a real tear. I'm pretty sure I was actually there that night in the cold, dark night of Wilmington. I think, because what I honestly, I don't know if I may have been there for every day of that shoot. And the director, Perry Lang, was amazing. And we had a good time.
Oh my goodness. And speaking of like the cast, like, were they in the know that this was always going to happen? Were they scared? I don't know. Were they like, I mean, they're shifting Casey to Joey, and that's like Dawson's, you know what I mean? Was there like,
I mean, I think that like this is the hard thing with a TV show. So the showrunner is really the person who will sit down with the actors and, you know, say, this is where we're going with the story. But, you know, the hardest thing about back then was when we were making 23 episodes every year, the story was changing quickly, and you know, there wasn't always time to update people. But I think by that point, we'd had Greg Berlanti had really taken over the running of the show. And, you know, it was so sad when Kevin Williamson left, and the actors all lost that continuity of that person who had, you know, originally launched this thing with them. But by that point, I think they did know what we were doing and where we were going. And honestly, in a funny way, like the thing about The Longest Day in particular was that there were a lot of conversations that in a way the characters needed to have with each other. And so I think what we were trying to do in that episode, I mean, I'll sit there and watch people talk all day. Like, it doesn't bother me. But, you know, some people were like, how can we make all these conversations a little more dynamic and interesting? And I think that's why we took it out of chronological order a little bit and, repeated some of the moments and all of that. Because we wanted all the characters to have a chance to really like check in this organic way, because, you know, it's just sometimes, you just miss seeing two characters together. And like, we knew we're like, okay, we want to do a Pacey Andy scene, and we want to do, a Joey Dawson scene, and we just really wanted to see all those characters together. So it was
beautiful. Beautiful. You're a legend, let me tell you. After that, like, I know you think about like how stressful it was, but please know that like people talk about all of these episodes, like it's truly impacted so many people. So just thank you for amazing. And I would tell people, like, I watched Dawson's Creek too because of the dialogue. Like, I would learn new words myself. I learned new words in your book as well, which we'll talk about. So I love that you use language and, to really articulate so many feelings. So just thank you for that. Okay. Just a few more Dawson's Creek questions. I have to, right, Gina? I know you're probably used to it.
I should get my Dawson's Creek mug actually, and like
Okay, so True Love was it was a season finale of that third season, and it is a pretty big episode in terms of like Joey making a decision and the crying scene, which is now a meme, which if anybody saw this, I'm sure you've seen this meme. We have to thank Gina for this. So I don't know, do you want to tell us a little bit about, like, I'm assuming you knew that Joey was going to pick Pacey, right? Like, how do you decide that in a writer's room?
I mean, well, I guess we must have, obviously we knew that was the end game that we were going for, and that, like, 20 would be Dawson finds out, and 21 would be all that angst and everything. No, we always knew we were going there. That episode, the thing about it is that, like, there were 4 writers we kind of at the end of the year who worked on that one, and I just happened to be the one who was available to go to Wilmington when we were shooting it. So that meant that, like, I was the one who did the production rewrites, and like I sat with the director, and like, just kind of, you do that at the last stage before shooting to make sure everything's right for production. And
you did awesome.
And so I got to be there for that. So it is funny because that is one of the things that's like, I was excited when he cried. Like, I can't remember what's in the script. I think somebody I talked to did, like, we'd look this up, or somebody had found a copy of the script. Like, my memory was just like, it was a big moment. Like, the whole show started out being about Dawson and Joey. So, the fact that he cried, I was like, I was on board. I was there for it,
Oh yeah. Like, and then the final scene is like the dialogue between Pacey and Joey is also very, very, like, so you'll if you, I do encourage everyone to get this book that Gina just wrote, the Spinster Diaries. But what I learned in your book is that you were not much of a, like, romance kind of gal. Like, you were not, and maybe you still are, right? So I'm just curious, like, how do you write this stuff? Like, that last scene in True Love, like, I'm trying to wrap my head around this, Gina.
Well, I think it is, as I mentioned, like, I love these screwball comedy movies from the 30s, particularly the Philadelphia Story, but also Holiday, and going back to Shakespeare and Much Ado About Nothing, and the whole idea of, like, the battling lovers, and the idea that, like, love is expressed through language. And I definitely feel like, it's an interesting moment where people are like, oh, do you have to be writing from your authentic, real experience? Or, maybe you could be writing from your imagination. And so I don't think it's any surprise to anyone that, like, I never had a boyfriend in high school. Like, I never went on dates. I never went to dances, like, all of that. I have written way more dates than I have ever been on.
I love that.
So, it is a testament to the power of imagination. And also, the thing about TV that's very specific is, like, we're making a new show every week, but it's also got to be the same in so many ways. It's the same voice of the characters. And I know that that's something that, not everybody is great at finding a voice that originally was Kevin Williamson's voice, and replicating that in a way. And the great part of working on a show for so long is that I think you know, Kevin's voice at a certain point kind of merged with my own voice. And the way I like love stories that are a little more comic in tone, honestly. And that's the interesting thing about romance, is that so many people actually, you know, like a romance that's a little more like straight up just drama. And I famously love, I really, really, really love Jane Austen. But the reason that I love her is because I really think she's just a genius comic writer. And I know a lot of people love those happy endings, but, you know, I'm not so wedded to happy endings. I mean, you know, like you only get, like on TV, you know, we have to do 23 endings. And, you know, if they're all happy, no one's tuning in next week to see what's happening. So, you know, it's, cool. Yeah, it's, I really appreciate you reading the book. But yeah, I think I've always been really fascinated by why do love stories work so well. And I love to watch them, but I also love to deconstruct them. And, you know, as a writer, and think like, why am I sitting at the edge of my seat wondering what will happen to these people?
How would you describe that for Pacey and Joey fans then? Why were we so captivated by this?
I mean, obviously part of that has to just go to like Josh and Katie just had this real chemistry with each other, which was like undeniable. And I'm telling you, going back to those season 1 episodes, I'm actually working right now with a writer named John Harmon Feldman, who worked on season 1 of Dawson's Creek. And he wrote the episode where they go hunting for snails and do the extra credit project.
God, okay, how exciting.
So, you know, there are many voices and many people who contributed to that story, but ultimately, yeah, Josh and Katie really did have like incredible chemistry with each other and a real rapport that just always came through in the scenes that we wrote for them. It was, yeah.
So good. Well, I mean, it was you both complimented each other, right? The writing and the acting, right? The performance.
And it really, it was a great, honestly, I mean, I have thought about this a lot lately, but, you know, it really was an example of like, I mean, it's like, maybe I don't know if we can call it a manic pixie dream boy, but he's very supportive of her in like her aspirations and her ambitions. And I don't know exactly, I think that was the result of, again, a bunch of us writers kind of writing like what was our fantasy, I guess. And, you know, having someone in your life who believes in you and is supportive of you, I think that was the fantasy we all shared. And it's
my gosh,
it became Pacey. It became Pacey Witter, friend to women.
Seriously.
That's what we would say in the room.
After that, everybody was looking for their Pacey. I found my Pacey. She's around here somewhere, but yeah, I think being supportive. Yeah, I think support, like you said, like supporting, like somebody who's supportive of what your dreams are as an individual and all that stuff. So I think that's really important. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna skip right up to, because I'm not a big fan of season 5, but no, not because.
No worries.
I mean, because
it's all good.
But season 6, obviously, there was the Castaways episode, and this episode was just an episode that featured Pacey and Joey only. So I'm like, how do you decide to make an episode just about them? And I know at the time, like, they had a few scenes together and stuff, but it was everyone's, all of the PJers' dreams come true when this episode came out. And you wrote it.
I know. Oh my God, I'm still feel so lucky that I got to write it. I mean, that was, in a way, that I think that was an organic part of, so when a show is ending, I know this because I'm a huge fan of Insecure, and that just ended. You know, in the writer's room, if you've been doing it for, at this point on Dawson's, we had made maybe like 96 episodes of the show or something. You know, you sit back and you think like, well, what do we want to see? This is our last chance to see something. And, you know, Pacey and Joey at that point had been so far, you know, apart from their romance and their relationship, but obviously that had been a huge part of the show. So I think it probably just started from this natural place when we're like, you know, sitting there going, we've got like 6 episodes left of this show. And we didn't, at that point, we didn't know anything about the 2-hour movie that Kevin and Greg ultimately did that was added to, that was still to come. We didn't know about that. So we were just plotting out, you know, by the time we get to 23, we have to finish all these stories that we started for these characters and leave them in a good place. And the idea, you know, of just doing this Joey Pacey thing, came up, and I feel like it was probably just a gift to me of like, I think that was actually maybe the last episode that I wrote entirely on my own. And after everything I had done, for the show, it was great just to get that one assignment where I could really just, it's one of the things, and just my own writing, like no one else rewriting me, just, kind of my own work. It's not a first draft or anything, but it really is one of those things that was just really blessed throughout the whole process of making it.
And I wouldn't be a fan if I didn't quote the episode.
Oh,
but yeah, I'm going to go there. So there's that scene after they kiss and like, she's like, where did this come from? And he's kind of like, well, it's something that's just always there, like white noise, like this, just like it was. I don't know if you remember, there was a scene where he talks about what, like, and I thought it was just such a somehow you put us right back into that space of like that safe space of like that connection that they have with each other. So I just like, how do you do that, like Gina? Like, how do you truly like how do you do it? I don't understand.
I mean, I would say for me as a writer, part of my process is not that the part that's similar to the fans is I would always rewatch things. Like even when I'm a fan of something, like I rewatch it obsessively. And in my own writing, especially with Dawson's, all those years that I was working on it, I would go back to the pilot. I would go back to these episodes and like just try to draw inspiration from them, and just soaking in the language and in the characters. And by that point, it is crazy to think like, again, how long I worked on the show and just how much I was used to hearing those voices in my head and thinking I know what they're thinking and doing. So, and that is the joke about the Kmart and all of that is like, it's like in Shakespeare when characters like they go out into the woods and they're trapped in the woods and like something magical sort of happens. So we were playing with that idea that that's like, cool. They were back to being who they had been, season 3.
Oh, well, thank you so much for giving us that opportunity. Because let me tell you, a lot of people were like, is this it? So I remember when people heard stuff about that episode, they're like, oh, can't wait. So, okay. So before we dive into a couple other things, anything else you want to say about Dawson's Creek experience or storylines or your favorite, your least favorite? Like, just curious as a fan, like.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think I have successfully now like put some of the harder parts behind me. And, I just think about the, those moments, like I do think about Castaways and The Longest Day more than others because they meant more to me. And, some of the other ones you just, it is crazy. I mean, it's just, there were just so many of them. Like, I can't remember anymore. My little sister would always say that like she could tell when I wrote it, and so, whoa. That always meant a lot to me because part of the goal is to make it all sound as if it's from, just the voice of the show. But I always loved that she was always watching.
She knows.
Yeah.
She knows. So I did get a couple questions from other shows that you've written. I thought this question was funny. I'm curious how you're going to react to this, but Californication. So Gina also wrote for Californication. And so somebody asked me, do you have your own Hank Moody in your life?
Oh my God. I suspect that is perhaps one of my neighbors who is asking that question because I no names here, but there is one of my neighbors who it does have a little bit of a Hank Moody-ish vibe about him. So, I mean, they're out there everywhere. So
yeah. Okay. King of the Hill. I know that was the start of your career. I don't know if anybody knows this, but Greg Daniels is also the person behind The Office. He also wrote for the show. And so I know that you got to write an episode for that one, but we did get a general question. And I don't know if like when you were writing for that show, when you thought of the character Bobby, did everyone know how iconic he would become?
I mean, Bobby was like a huge favorite from the very beginning. I mean, Pam Adlon is the voice of Bobby, which I don't know if everyone knows that now that she's had this huge success with her show Better Things. But yeah, Bobby. I mean, the whole essence of the show was just, this boy who just like, and the boy and his dad, it's very
Uh-huh.
classic. And yeah, like actually I don't know if you could, well, whatever, another
Oh,
piece of art is
what?
my
Where is it?
my animation cell from my King of the Hill episode, which was about
Aw.
Bobby, and it was season 2. So I think, yes, we already sort of knew that Bobby was going to be comedy gold. Like he just,
Aw.
you know, it's great when characters want things that they're never going to get. And Bobby, he wanted a lot of things he wasn't going to get.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so obviously Gilmore Girls, another big staple show in your career. I know that you were writing in the later seasons, right? Season 7, right?
Yeah.
So how was that going into, because that was after, obviously after Dawson's Creek, and so now you're
Yeah.
going on another show that's been long running, and it's a little different, although there is still that humor, a little bit of that, like, it's comical in some ways, right? But it definitely and there's a lot of words in that show too. So maybe there were some things you did, you could kind of latch on to. But how was that experience getting on that show?
I mean, that was crazy just because, like, yes, it was season 7. So just imagine there's 6 seasons of the show before we got there. And, really, I can remember just so desperately trying to, like, watch them all before I got there. And, I had sort of seen the show a little bit, but I wasn't a huge fan of the show, which I think was an interesting place to be in because I was just very objective about it.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was kind of a crazy time because Amy Sherman Palladino had left. And so the show was going to go on without her. And we had a couple writers who'd worked on the show the previous, seasons. But it was really, really hard to come in. And, I always like to point out that like the end of season 6, our beloved main character, Lorelai, I believe, sleeps with Christopher, even though she's
Yeah.
engaged to Luke. So I always like to say to people, have your own writer's room. Like get 6 people and some coffee and try to figure out what happens next because it ain't easy, folks. Like that's a hard one
No.
to
Such
do.
a hard one.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was hard, but I mean, honestly, like such a great show in terms of like, again, using the screwball comedy style to tell the story of
Mm-hmm.
Luke and Lorelai. And, it has a lot of flaws as a show, but like, honestly, to see this character, Rory, who, is ambitious and smart and loves to read. And, I love that. We need more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard an interview with you about how you wanted to be a journalist, and so you could really, but you were kind of more introverted, and like Rory was somebody that you resonated with. So I'm sure that helped in writing her voice, right? And her story.
Yes. That was always, I did think that was strange that like it was sort of baked into the show that she had wanted to be a journalist. And I had
Mm-hmm.
like wanted to be a journalist. I was like a little high school journalist. I worked at a
Uh-huh.
newspaper in my 20s, but like I was not great at talking to strangers when I was younger. I'm still not good at it. Like you're so
You're doing
sweet and
good.
nice and kind. But yeah, so I was not going to make it as a journalist. And Rory, I don't know what happened to Rory. I mean, I watched the reboot, but I'm not qualified to speak on
Yeah.
Rory
Yeah.
Gilmore at 32.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Okay, well, enough about television because now you are a book author, y'all. The Spinster Diaries. I want to start off with the word spinster and why you chose this and why you identify as this because I'm telling you, like, you write so much great like romance, and so I'm just like, can you just give everybody a little bit a taste about the book and like this whole idea of being a spinster, please?
Well, I mean, it is a word that like, has a sort of negative connotation to a lot of ears. So, it's something that like I myself, I guess, always having been an English major in college and a huge fan of, female writers like Jane Austen, who would be an example, like she herself was a spinster, an unmarried woman. That this in the time before women had, freedom in so many ways to control their, who they married or whether or not they were going to have children. There were just a lot of women who didn't marry either because they didn't have, they didn't meet someone they could marry or they didn't feel it was right for them or whatever. And all those women were just really brave and strong and interesting people to me. And I've always enjoyed their stories because I think it's, it's anyone who's living a more unconventional life, is to me an interesting hero and an interesting story. So I've always been drawn to those stories. And and my book is about a woman who was kind of, she used that word. She was, lived in the late 18th century, and her name is Frances Burney, and that was how she identified herself. So, I sort of took it on for the book, but I mean, people who know me know that I have basically been joking about being a spinster since I was probably 25 or something, when it's a little premature. A little premature to be a spinster at 25. But if you have it in you, I think some of us do just have this independence in us. And, it's not, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Nowadays, everybody has so many more choices, which is great.
Yeah. And I think there was a part in the beginning where you talked about this idea of the girl world, the real struggle, and how you're I opted out. I saw how everybody's trying to dress nice and the shoes, but I'm gonna just, and I think that's really admirable that you just were you recognize this point in your life where people were going to be changing and catering to other people, and you're yeah, I'm going to just do my own thing. And I think that's really neat. Can you walk us through at such a young age that you already were you already decided no, I'm gonna not go that path?
Well, I mean, in some ways I think once I got to LA, and I'm working in the entertainment industry, there is just a certain kind of person who works in the entertainment industry who, God bless, is very into clothes and shoes and makeup and a lot of stuff that I just never really did have time for. And I think part of that is, when I was younger, I just was never very into that. I honestly, as a lot of people can relate, I was heavier when I was in high school. And so I never had a chance to wear cute clothes. We just didn't have them back then. So it wasn't something that I really got super, super into. And of course, hilariously, everyone who has a sibling, my older sister was into that kind of stuff. So sometimes you're well, I'm going to be into other stuff, and yeah. And so you pick and choose, but yeah, I think, I really always have been primarily just drawn to books in my life, just from the very, very, very earliest time. My best friend's mom shared this wonderful memory with me where she literally remembers me saying at one point, I'm going to read every book in the library, and that was just, it was a calling. I always talk about writing that way, and it sounds kind of crazy, but it's a gift to know that you really want to do this thing, and and it's just feels right.
And I think I have to commend you that you, like I said earlier, your writing in the television shows and Dawson's Creek, you really did expose us to a new kind of way to communicate new words and that sort of hunger to learn more and to read more. So thank you for doing that. So I think that you've been able to continue to maybe inspire other people. I remember Joey saying, and I remember one of the first few chapters, I was this sounds like Joey. I was I can hear the voice, I can hear the dialogue, how you express yourself. And something that's really one of my favorite parts about this book, y'all, is, I'm in my 30s. A lot of my friends are in their 30s or 40s. This book really actually, yes, you'll learn a lot about Gina's style and writing, but it hits on something really important too on a human level. And that is that it starts off with the fact that you learn about having a brain tumor. And it sort of takes you on this ride right up to the point where at the end I was wait, that's the end? I was I guess, and I was oh, I guess that is the end. I don't want to spoil it for y'all, but obviously she's here today and it's all good. But definitely, I think that's one thing that I love, that you use the writing to touch on something that it's scary and it's real and it's life, and it's even that part where you're I'm obsessing about death, and I'm yes, we all feel this way. And it's so I just I don't know if you want to talk through how you got through that with the writing, and what perspective you want to give to everyone else when life throws you something unexpected and out of control. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. One thing I realized, and I think I wrote the book, such a long time ago now, but ultimately when all was said and done and, it was finally going to get published and, you have some distance from it, I realized that the book was in a big way about anxiety. And it's very interesting because obviously we've been living through this terrible moment for the past, it's not even a moment. What am I saying? We've been living through what we TV writers like to say is 3 seasons of COVID. And, that it really is, just, I don't know, for me, the moment when they told me that I had this brain tumor, which again, not cancer, just a kind of benign tumor, it really became to me just to symbolize like all these things that are out there that we're all afraid of and that we can't control. And, you know, and you have to make decisions sometimes with an imperfect amount of information. So, you know, a lot of times I did a lot of reading back then about decision making when I was working on my book. And, you know, there are a lot of Oliver Sacks and his work and all that stuff. Like there's an interesting school of thought that like, you know, when you make decisions, we all sit down and write our pro and con lists, you know, and I mean, people do that even with relationships and jobs and all these things, but that
Right.
ultimately there is some other part of our brains, which maybe is the emotional part, that sort of kicks in. And I think that's what people mean when they say you have a gut feeling about something. And so really the idea that like what I was writing about was this decision that I had to make of like which, you know, part of myself was going to make this decision. But, you know, every day we're all just living in this imperfect world where, you know, trying to figure out how to keep our anxieties at bay. And again, the book is about this woman from the 18th century, and she kept this diary her whole life, which it seems impossible, but it's 24 volumes long. And it seems pretty clear in retrospect that writing it's called a diary, but it's also some of it was letters that she wrote because, you know, in 1790, like there's none of that happening. And she, this was a way that she kind of controlled her anxiety. And I think writing, you know, we all as writers get to sit down and create a whole world from scratch. And that does give us a feeling of control. And ultimately for me as a TV writer, I've really realized you don't always have control because you're not a novelist and you don't get to decide. And when you're writing TV, you know, your boss, the head writer and the showrunner gets to decide. And then even then they might call you from the set and say, we can't do this. Like, you know, there's just so many other things to consider. Yeah. So I did write the book in order to have a way to just kind of put my voice out there, and not have it, you know, go through all those other channels.
Well, I hope you have more books in mind of continuing to write. What are you thinking? Are you going to come out with some more books?
I mean, I really did want to and intend to, and all the people who've written books before explained to me that like you're supposed to start the next one before you even like, give yourself a pause. But you know, and I did take this wonderful and amazing ride where I got to make the show Dare Me, which was you know, just a huge moment for me, having worked for so long on other people's shows and finally getting this chance to start from scratch and make this amazing show with Megan Abbott, who had written the book Dare Me, and we brought it to life. And that, you know, really took up all of, you know, 2018 and 2019. And then this happened, and I've had plenty of time stuck at home to be working on my book. So
can you tell everybody about Dare Me and where we can find it now?
Oh yes, it's out there on Netflix. It's out there on Netflix, and it's only one season, but we think it still works as one season. And we also think that people should be, if they enjoy it, they should head to their nearest bookstore or library and get Megan's book and just finish it up that way. Because yeah, we really, it was a chance, you know, like with Dawson's, you know, to tell a story about friendship, which is something that I realized actually in my career, I've written quite a lot about friendship. And that in my mind, I think Dawson's, obviously it is a very romantic show and that's a lot of what's endured, but it was ultimately a show about friendship. And I think that's one of the real reasons why I was able to write it so well, is that my friends who I had in high school, who many of whom I'm still in touch with, like I was very close to them. And I think at that moment in your life when you're trying to separate yourself in some ways from your parents, which I know, you know, the kids these days don't do as much as we did back then. But, you know, you're trying to figure out who you are, and your friends are a big part of that. And that's what I think the show was about, really.
Awesome. Fantastic. I know you lightly talked about Frances, I'm going to say her last name right, Bernie.
Like,
okay, Bernie.
Yeah.
The mother of English fiction, you call her. And I know that you were trying to get something off the ground with that, but do you still have hopes? Because you shouldn't give up, because I think I mean, a lot of people love your work. And so I just wanted to tell you, like, you know, keep going.
That's so sweet. Yeah, that's what I tell everyone too all the time is we all have to keep going. And, that's just one story that like, I had wanted to tell and I told her story in the book and I sort of, obviously would love the chance to tell it again. I think I love stories set in another time period, not just because the clothes are great, but also because I think it is a chance to really show people, just overcoming these amazing, amazing odds. And, these like, it's not so well known, but the late 18th century, like the era right before Jane Austen, there were a lot of great female novelists back then. And, it really was when the novel was still new, and kind of similar thing in Hollywood. Like when movies were still new, they were like, oh, sure, let's have women be editors. Let's have women be writers. Like,
right.
When something is new, like there's a lot of just exciting energy and all that. So yeah, like I am always looking for projects that, or also just that are similar to that, just a story of a woman who really, is leading an unconventional life and making bold, brave choices.
I love it. Sign me up. I'll watch. I hope that you do. Okay, I know we have a few minutes left before I think we have some questions too, but do you have any advice for folks who are looking to write in TV or in general? And then also I do want to see if you have any advice for people who are in our 30s or 40s, and it's like, I don't know, sometimes we feel like, oh, we know what we're supposed to do, but then we come here, we get here and we're like, I don't know. I just would love to know, what would Gina Fattore say?
That is a funny one. Like, I don't know which I should do first. The writing one is easy in a way because like, I feel like, I mean, when I first fell in love with books. And so the idea of being a writer to me was just very wound up in reading constantly. And that like, that is really the training ground where you learn how to write, is just in reading. And, it was later in my life, once I met Greg Daniels, that this idea of being a screenwriter came into my head. But I, really feel like studying the thing that you're trying to make is, to me, the fun part. That's also the work part. And especially with screenwriting, because it's so rooted in structure. And so, I mean, this is kind of a geeky night of fun, but, I like to sit down and watch something, with my pen in hand, and I just sort of break it down scene by scene. And I think, how did someone tell this story? And, that's how I just always go back to that and trying to, it's a little bit, cheating. It's a little bit cheating, but the idea is just to figure out, how did the things that you love, how were they put together? How were they made? And that's always what I go back to. And, and you know what? That's a funny question about the age thing, because like, I mean, obviously, like I couldn't even log on to the IG Live, so I'm old. But the interesting thing is my book, I wrote it when I was like 36, 37 back then. And now I look back and I realize like it is sort of a time capsule, like about that time, which is sort of an odd time because, and this is funny given the recent Sex and the City like reboot, but when I was young, like it was considered sort of odd if you were female and you weren't married yet by the time you were, say, like 35. And like, that's the original point of Sex and the City, is like, oh, here's these women and they're not leading a conventional life. And of course, for gay people back then, that was a given because gay marriage wasn't legal yet. So like, you were just living a life at that point in your 30s where you were still like a single person hanging out with your friends. And, a lot of other people had already gotten married and had children in their 20s. So it was sort of this interesting dividing line. And, nowadays, I think there's still many people who are, coupling up, later, certainly at all ages and all times. It's, so much has changed since then, but it's a funny age. I think that I genuinely, the thing I'm very big on is like 40 is great. And people just need to get over all that angst. I really did think my early 40s were amazing. And, that's a great time. And so there's nothing to be afraid of, but I just think, I don't know, I think the 30s are kind of hard in that way. And I have to admit, I was always a person who, like I said, I really, from the time I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, I had this idea in my head of being a writer. And I really had blinders on about other things in the world. And so I am really not qualified to give people advice, because like I meet people and they're like, I want to do all these things and I want to get married and I want to have kids. And I'm just like, all I ever wanted to do was stay home and write. So I cannot really advise you like on,
that's awesome.
on how to do other things. So
I think the general gist there, though, is that that's cool that you found something that you really care about and you love doing it, and that's all that really matters. So that's pretty cool.
It always makes me happy when I hear people who like found that thing, and you know, heaven knows it doesn't have to be writing. You know, it's like it's just something that you really feel like, you know, is a daily part of your life, and it's enriches your life. And you know, it's especially touching with TV because, you know, working in TV, you also do it with other people, and you know, you have really solid friendships that can come out of that, and that's very touching.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, some questions. I do see some Dawson's Creek questions, which is, you know, expected. So somebody wants to know, will there be a reboot and reunion of Dawson's Creek by any chance? And would you be down for that too?
I mean, here's the thing. That is above my pay grade. Like, that is a call that is going to Kevin Williamson or to Greg Berlanti. And and I've always been told that, like, you know, because, you know, Jen is dead, which, you know, I didn't kill her. I'm not on the line for that one. So
were you surprised about that, by the way? I know.
I mean, I think I knew going in what it was going to be, because I knew what the story was and everything, but I guess I was a little surprised. I mean, I don't think it would have occurred to me to do that. But I was on a panel once with Kevin Williamson, and he explained it, like what he was thinking, and, you know, that it is a rite of passage to lose a friend. And obviously that's incredibly sad. I mean, mostly we hope you get a lot further down the road before you start losing your friends. As far as I mean, it could happen. I mean, I have no inside scoop on that, is what I'm saying.
Okay. And then my last comment or question is, like, how can we continue to support the work you're doing? I know this.
I mean, you did it. Yeah. You, like, and, you know, you bought my book. Like, it's still, like, so crazy exciting to see some, you know, it's out there in the world somewhere. It's not just, you know, in my office over there, the 10 copies. No, honestly, like, I love, you know, just like I said, during the pandemic, I think I got an email from someone who was like my age, and she was like, I didn't watch this show at the time because I had little kids, but like, suddenly I've just discovered, you know, Joey and Pacey. And I was like, thank you for, you know, giving us a shot. I mean, it's TV has changed so much, but I realize now that it is the things that, you know, people grew up with that have more impact. You know, it's really great to hear your story and to meet you. It's been awesome.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I knew your name long a time ago because I looked up who wrote these episodes. And when I saw you on the Dawson's Creek Critique, which shout out to them, podcast, amazing podcast about Dawson's Creek, I was like, wait, y'all talked to Gina? I was like, wait, what? So that's how I found you. I was like, and then they were talking about your book, and I was like, oh my gosh. So there's a lot of people who like really admire your work, and I'm excited for you.
Shout out to their book too. Like, I would hold it up if I had it in the other room.
I do have it, but
they're awesome. Delightful, and I love their story too, especially because they're friends who met, you know, because they both love Dawson's Creek. And honestly, some of my friends who actually, I think a couple might even be watching, but, you know, like in college, like, I met a lot of my friends because I was parked in front of the TV, and they were too.
It really was a show that brought people together. Like, one of my friends is on too, and so I'm just, here's the book. My fiance brought it over. Yeah. We want to get that in, because that is a great book that really, you know, looks back at the creek, but with the modern lens, and but great affection, and I was very impressed. Yes, me too. Oh my goodness. Well, I wish we had more time, but I can't thank you for even taking this hour with us to talk about and letting me geek out. Thank you so much. I was like,
Well, it's such a thrill to meet you, and thank you for introducing me to the world of Instagram Live. Like you've helped a person.
You did amazing, and I thank you so much for welcoming all my questions. And we're fans, and we love your work. So keep writing. We will keep reading, watching.
Thank you so much. So sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.